Right, I think we'll get going. I can see one or two faces, and I can only apologise to you because you came to this morning's session. We've only got one set of jokes, so we're just going to replay those in this session. So apologies to you guys. So thank you for coming. Before we get into the main business, just want to say, fantastic weekend for cricket. Do we have any Australians in the audience? Damn. Men's and women's Ashes side, clean sweep in their respective games. Bit of a difficult start for me on Friday evening. My adopted county of Surrey knocked out my home county of Lancashire from the T20. This tension dissipated on Saturday morning, watching my daughter play in her first under-7s game. Now, records really tumbled in the last Ashes game. Steve Smith, highest number of catches by an outfield player in Ashes history. Harry Brook, lowest number of balls to get to 1,000 test runs. Ivy Unsworth, highest number of cartwheels in an outfield during an innings. It was quite spectacular to see. Let's get moving. So, we are going to do a couple of things. So let me introduce my learned colleagues here. We've got Bob Verber, Alvaro and Ruan. Bob and Alvaro from the London Market Joint Venture, and Ruan from DXC, who leads our build teams. So we're going to do a very rapid run through of some of the things that we touched on the session in the 19th of June. And then we're going to get to the more interesting bit, which is the questions. But we thought it'd be worthwhile perhaps just setting up and replaying some of our key messages. I'll just start with, I always give this description, but I'll just start at the highest level. What is this program of work? So 3 things to wrap your head around. So first of all, the digitisation of the central services within the London Market Joint Venture, Phase 1 Digital as we refer to it, and that's slated to take place by June next year. Second item, to digitise the market's interaction with those services, Phase 2 Digital as we call it, available from August, September next year. Phase 1 Digital will be a single market event where we will make that change for all market participants at the same time. Phase 2 Digital will be on the timeline of your choosing, so firm by firm is what I mean by that, albeit we will be pushing really hard to get maximum take-up within the first 12 and 24 months of our Phase 2 Digital. So how is it going? I get a lot of questions, all right, are you actually going to be able to do this? We've not got a great record of it. The measure that I use and the measure that we use is the data on progress hitting build milestones. And you know what? The guys are doing a really good job. Now, it's not to say that this isn't a hugely complex, large-scale program. We will definitely encounter challenges as we go, but the guys are in good shape right now. So our expectation and our confidence are both high, and we're shooting for those milestones next year. One of the key messages that we gave on the 19th of June, and we'll repeat it several times today, will be there's an enormous amount of positivity and sentiment around the program. You yourselves have probably been involved in any number of workshops and discussions and coffees and all manner of things in an informal and formal basis about how this program should go, probably stretching back years, to be honest with you. I remember sitting across the road listening to Bruce present Blueprint 1. I don't even remember I don't remember anything before the pandemic, to be honest with you, but it was some time ago. Everyone's supportive, everyone wants it to happen. The difference now is that this program is no longer in the long grass. It's here. You will need a Phase 1 adoption plan for June next year. You will need a Phase 2 adoption plan on a timescale of your choosing, but we'll be pushing you to monitor your progress next year. We'll be looking for market participants to tell us how they're doing. So it really requires action. So we said it on the 19th, we'll say it again today. Leave the room with a sense of what that means for you. Leave the room with some urgency that you go back to base, and actually there's work to do about building an adoption plan. We are here to help in any number of ways. We'll talk a little bit today about what that means in terms of support from the program. Also in the audience today, you've got a variety of members from the Blueprint 2 engagement team, the joint venture and Lloyds. They will pop questions up and responses today as they need to. We've also got Joe Gordon from PPL here who'll be available should we have any questions to help in that regard as well. So before we move on, let's just quickly talk about timescales. So the program is pivoting to adoption. And what I mean by that is there's no lack or reduction in focus on build activity. What I mean by is that we're reaching a level of maturity where adoption and build become two interlocking and critical milestones. So that's absolutely fantastic. It's also a little bit scary because it means the program is real, and it means that at some time in the very near future, it is going to impact your firms, and you're going to have to prepare and actually start executing change, as opposed to where we have been for quite a considerable amount of time, which will be about preparing for change. In terms of timescales, we've got build activity going on right through to March, and we've got adoption activity starting in the fourth quarter. Bob is best placed to give us some more information about this, but we can talk about our Vanguard program and the role that plays and how that fits into our testing and adoption phases. But the core elements of adoption around test, around training, and around launch are all live topics now. We're working on how we bring those to life at a market level. So with that, I'll just leave you with two messages, if I may. One, and I'm going to be a broken record on this, leave this meeting today with a call to action. You will need an adoption plan for phase 1 digital, executable in June next year, and you will need an adoption plan for phase 2 digital from August next year. Now, the second one, you have more flexibility on choosing what's right for your firm, but there are, dependent on where you sit, there are some complexities there. So for larger brokers in the room, I would have thought there's an 18 months or so run-in to make sure that your estate operations that you might have in outsourced vendors or in India or middle and back office things that are done at scale, probably 12 to 18 months work to do there. So now is the time to actually start putting meat on the bones of those plans. I'm going to hand over to Alvaro and Ruan. They're going to talk a little bit more about some of the technical aspects we covered on the 19th.
Thanks, Matt. First message that we gave on the 19th, I'm going to repeat today again, is the build is on track and will remain on track. We will keep it there and we will deliver to the milestones that we put out there. We've delivered to milestones to date and we've hit our dates quite comfortably. So I'm quite confident that we go hit our milestones I've got on the screen in front of you. So the first major milestone that we're aiming for is end of March next year. And that is when we are what we call build complete. That means we've built the software and the software is ready for use, but we need to go through some other phases before we actually put it into use. While we're doing that though, as Matt mentioned a second ago, we've got a program that is going to help us de-risk the overall build, and that's Vanguard testing. And that's us working with the market or selected members in the market to test early, test often, to make sure that we get the feedback and that the systems are doing exactly what we expect the systems to do. Any questions around Vanguard, we're more than happy to take them. Bob will pick up along with Ray in the audience later on that topic. So that gets us to March with a lot of testing. We also have other testing that we do alongside that. If you've got any questions on that, just pick that up with me afterwards. From March all the way through to the end of June, we'll continue that Vanguard testing, so that will carry on. We'll also then look to do individual customer self-service testing. This is where customers can come in and test at will, make sure that their systems are integrating with us in the way we expect it, and that they're getting the feedback and the messages in the manner that they expect to. Along with that, we'll do operational readiness, get ready to be able to use the system, make sure that all the customers are onboarded onto the new system and that we can use the new systems. At that point, cut over in end of June to phase 1. After phase 1, we'll cut over in September or beginning of September onto phase 2. Again, as I said, we're more than happy to take more questions on this later, but I think it's now more important I hand over to Alvaro to talk us through the quick recap on the benefits on this approach.
Okay, sounds good. So I will touch again, I'll repeat some of the main messages from the 19th event. But at the same time, while I go through it, I will address some of the questions that we have had this morning and some of the questions that we have received in the last 2 weeks to see if I can dispel a few myths as we go. So the main benefits of the customer testing and deployment approach, I won't go into all of the details, but the main one that I want to highlight for the audience is that on phase 1, we are all moving to a new digital platform in the cloud. This means that the end of day batches are done and now you have the full resilience and disaster recovery and volume handling that a cloud platform has. This is very important because in phase one, even though you will be transacting business very much the same way that you do today, through LPens for premiums or queries or write-back messages, so very much as you do business today. However, the way that the system operates is very different because now we don't have to wait until the end of day to close the day and do an end of day batching and then you receive all your messages. Actually, transactions are done live. That means that if we receive an LPen in the morning by the broker and one of our technicians picks it up and they finish their processing, they sign and settle, the system of record will be done there by 10 a.m. in the morning. We won't have to wait for the end of day batch. That will be available on phase one. It doesn't have to wait for phase two. That's one of the main benefits of the deployment approach. Going a little bit more into the details of that phase one. So first, as I said there, you'll have everybody moves to the new platform. But the second bit, and I will do a hiatus here, is the phasing out of bespoke solutions. And I'll do a little note here. There's a lot of questions about bespoke EDIs. To set the context, EDIs are, for those of you that don't know, it's the main messaging that we use in the market today. It has been with us for 20-odd years. There's about 40-something EDI types. And of those EDI types, there's hundreds of customizations per customer. So sometimes a single organization has a very specific customized EDI message. As you might remember from 2021, 2022, bespoke EDI messages were out of scope for the project because one of the guiding principles since Blueprint 1 in the joint venture and also some of the guiding principles that the Data Council has always seen is standardization of the data at all levels. Even though EDI messages were never discussed, especially in the Data Council, it is something that we want for all market participants to use the same standard. So bespoke EDI messages were out of scope. However, in the last few months, we have revisited that decision because some bespoke EDI messages are actually used by a large portion of our customers. They're not our single instances of customization. So we have identified some bespoke EDI messages that we can bring into scope to help our customers adopt phase one faster with less changes. Very important, not all bespoke EDI messages will be in. We're doing a matrix of benefit against cost and against how many organizations use it. This will be published in August. So we will publish in August this work with any commercial proposals back then. So on that hiatus of the bespoke EDI messages, the next step is that all portals will change. That's on phase one. Every portal that you use today, except the IMR, will change. That includes Casablanca, IPC screens, ECF, claim agreement screens, claim workflow screens. There's so many of the portals of account inquiry that all of them will change. They will change for the better. So we will have better portals, more modern. They are mobile. They can be seen on mobile. They have a much better user interface, but they will change. That means that if you have operations teams either onshore or offshore, you will need to retrain them. The same functionality or even better functionality, but it's just a new graphical screen and a new way of interacting. All portals will change. The next step is, the next part there on our detail is messaging remains largely as it is. So apart from that special comment on bespoke EDI messages, write-back messages, CWT messages, DRI messages all remain largely as they are. That means that the data package that you either receive from the joint venture or the data package that you send to us in the joint venture remains largely as it stands today. The main difference is that the gateway or the way that you send it to us or pick it up from us will change. In today's world, you send your messages through 3 gateways, XAG, XDH, and XSH, for those of you that know. In the future, all of them will go through the ASG Adept gateway, so the ASG Adept product.
That means that, again, all your EDIs, right, like CWTs, EBOTs and ECOTs, even your CDRs will go through the same gateway. This means that all customers that communicate with the joint venture in a machine-to-machine IP addresses, their security credentials, and the way that their systems communicate to us in a new gateway. Some of the, so the ASG Adept gateway has details already on how you can connect to it. So there is already work that you or your vendors can do to start connecting to this new gateway. Small note as well is another question that has come to us in different forums is that the use of the ASG Adept gateway does not have any extra cost for any customers under the joint venture core services. Let me repeat that. Right now, today, you are charged on a transaction level by the joint venture for premiums or claims or treaties or delegated authority or any other kind of transactions. The cost of this in the future will include the use of ASG Adept Gateway for the core. There's some confusion because ASG Adept is offered as a standalone product, and you can use it for non-viewer and you can use it for your own benefit, but that's separate. Within the core services, it will be included. And so you don't have to go into a separate contract with ASG, it will be included for your core services. If you choose to have the other part, that's okay, but that's customers can choose to do so. The second to last point there is that one of the biggest de-risking factors for phase one and the way that we divided phases 1 and 2 deployment is because on phase 1, the processing of premiums and claims, and actually all insurance transactions, will remain largely as it is. And the JV will continue the same processing as we do today. That means that today we receive an LPAN, one of our technicians types the signing, types it into the system, and then we got the signing and settlement message that will largely stay the same. In claims, as soon as we receive lead agreement, we go into the XCS class screens. Well, in the new world, it will be new screens, but the process stays the same, not only with us, but also with every market participant. So phase 1, the process stays the same because, of course, the channels are very much what we have today. And as we spoke there, all the outputs, messaging outputs to brokers and carriers will remain very much as they are. For phase 2 is, of course, this is where actually the full digital functionality will be available. So now the full CDR will be available. So now you can, if you have chosen to use either through PPL or one of the placement platforms or your own software, to send CDRs to the platform to submit EBOT and ECOT for your premium and claims transactions, then from phase 2, this will be fully available. This means that now from phase 2 onwards, the joint venture will be able to automate some of our processes because now, of course, given that we have the CDR or an EBOT and ECOT submission from the broker, then now we can automate some of our validations and checks that we do manually today. And finally, very important here is that even though it's not yet set the date, we are planning to sunset services from phase 1. That means that EDI, CWT, and DRI should have a limited shelf life. We haven't yet finalized if it's 18 months, 3 years, but there is a time period where as people, as organizations move into the new digital channels, the more we have to sunset this so we can digitize the full market and not allow ourselves to be in this position again in the future. So let me bring it back to Matt and Bob for adoption. Yeah.
Thanks, Alvaro. So just recapping, phase 1 digital, launch of the central service, the digitization of the central services within the JV, target in June next year. Phase 2 digital, the integration of the digitization of the integration of those services between the market and the JV. Phase 3, realize a broad church of benefits across operational efficiency, across increase in speed, decrease in costs, the ability for the market to evolve what in some cases will be very, very long-standing parts of an operating model, the ability for both the joint venture and Lloyds and all market participants at large to put data in a different part of their proposition and actually really escalate value that we are creating for clients, and really sort of reimagine that. Obviously not things that happen on day one, things that are available from day one. And the key thing I think is when you pull day one and day two together, what you have is a digital end-to-end journey supported by a set data structure in the CDR and supported by clear roles and responsibilities about what and where things are done and by whom, derived from the PRR. Lots of acronyms there, and I can only apologise. I'm a VIP, I have to use them. So that phase one digital journey comes to life in June next year. And as Alvaro articulated, there really are two things to wrap our heads around. It's not a big list of items. When you look at it at the highest level for phase one digital, it focuses on portals and it focuses on messaging. Messaging being the technical aspects of what we're doing, primarily focused around origination and destination and messaging, and also onboarding and security considerations that come hand in hand with that. The second item on portals is there are in total around over 100 or so tools being decommissioned. I've been in the market about 20 years. Out of the list of 100 or so, I think I got to about 13 or 14 that I'd actually heard of, let alone that I actually knew what they did. So the key list of things that will be used in your estate and will be impacting your teams will be a pretty short list, and it's as Alvaro articulated, IPC, Casablanca, ECF. The replacement portals in IPOS and ICOS and the tools that you're going to get, they have greater functionality, they are more intuitive from a user standpoint perspective, but they are different. So one of the key items, and probably the main item for preparation for phase one digital, is to understand the impacts of those changes on your teams. So where we have looked at it is to give you a sense that we think there are tech, we think there are process, and we think there are people changes and impacts in your firms to consider. So when we talk about phase one adoption, these are where the places to look. So the tech perspective, all centered on messaging, not a huge list. We're trying to keep those changes to a minimum where technically your organizations function and submit into the market in the way that they always have done. And we're trying to keep the technical changes to a minimum in that regard. I think the process changes will be the longest pole in the tent for the market. If you have offshore services at scale around your claims or fiduciary or credit control, financial operations, there will be changes to the way things work there. Improvements, because we're putting tools that are more modern, I think that are more functionally rich, but changes all the same. The type of work that in your claims, middle and back office teams that you've executed successfully many, many times before, where you've got standard operating procedure changes, where you've got re-platforms of systems, where you've got new product launches, where you've got vendors acquiring vendors, and you've got incumbent services transitioning between different companies if you're an outsourced vendor supplier arrangement. So work that you are familiar with but will need to be planned. So from an adoption perspective, the key elements of our proposal to you are around testing, training, and the preparation for launch. So we will be supplying support in all those areas. We'll be supplying training support, documentation around the new portals. The majority of the information is already out there, but any outstanding technical work technical specification or information that you need will be available from September. And then in terms of testing and launch, we're pulling those plans together at the moment to make sure that we can do that for phase one at a market level. For phase two digital, obviously that's something that firms will do on their own timescale. There is work to do right now. On the 19th, Sheila Cameron led a session accompanied by Kate Markham from Hiscox and Theo Butt and also Clyde. I've only worked for him for like 30 years, I've forgotten his name. Clyde from Aon, and they talked about, they were more primarily focused on data and focused on some of the things that we're pulling in place for phase two digital. So if you take a step back, we've got kind of right now from a phase 2 digital perspective, we've got use of the MRC coming in around September and October this year. We have got preparation around understanding your API and EDI capability, understanding your ability to create and submit a CDR. So that's looking at your current data and saying, are you Accord compliant? Do you have all of the information within your estate that would be required to submit a CDR when you get to phase 2 digital? All stuff that you wouldn't need to use in anger with the exception of the MRC until you get to phase 2 digital, but stuff that likely you will have work to do when you lift the cover on that and you've got pieces to do in your estate to pull together. For phase 1 digital, it really is about preparing for those tech, process, people changes. We expect there'll be impacts in most teams at varying levels, depending on your scale, depending on your structure. It's impossible for us to sort of give a sort of sense of what that looks like. Everyone's operating model will be slightly different. You have different relationships and different asks from vendors, different structures and different ways of processing. But for phase 1 digital, this will be the job of work on an adoption plan. So with that, hang on, we're not using those there. With that, we will move on to questions. So thank you for anyone who submitted questions up front. We had a really interesting list of questions which we've sort of grouped together and provided the team food for thought. We're going to try and cover as many of those questions as we can as we go, but we'll take questions in the room. What our engagement, the engagement partners will do is they will try and seed some discussion into the room just on the basis of the questions that we received already. So this morning was really useful that they were able to just sort of input to discussions with different questions that we've got. Can I ask that if you are going to ask a question, just wait for the mic before you get the question, because that means that the question will be picked up on the sound because we're recording this session. It will mean that when it's replayed, whoever's watching it will hear your question and also the response from the panel. And could I also ask that you just introduce yourself, give us your name and your firm before we get in, so we just know who everyone's coming from. But listen, let's get into the interesting bit and start taking some questions.
Hi there, Daniel Hickey from Guy Carpenter. Interested to hear that the end of day batch is no more. Presumably the settlement remains one per day, per currency, per bank account. You're not going to be taking lots of different debits and credits through the day.
So yes and no. Yes, central settlement through STFO for Lloyds and company market RBS LIPS. They stay on the same batches as we have today. So actually, if you sign the premium today, you actually get it in 4 working days, really. If today is day 0, you get it on day 3. However, the new platform will have a third settlement option, is what we call direct payment. We're using our partners Vitesse. So either broker to carrier or carrier to broker, especially in claims, you will be able to settle immediately. So you will be able to settle in 5 minutes if you wish to use non-centrally settled Vitesse or direct payments. Those payments are not only faster, especially if you have funds in the account. I will go a little bit into detail because this is an important part of the new platform. You will have 2 options for direct payments: funded accounts and non-funded accounts. Funded accounts means that you will have £2 million or a lost fund in the air. So you have a wallet. As soon as a premium or claim comes in, you click Vitesse, in 5 minutes that money moves. Non-funded accounts is you still want to use the Vitesse settlements, but you don't want to manage a lost fund and finance reconciling that at the every month. It's a pain. You can keep your wallet empty. You press Vitesse, and now you have 7 calendar days, I think it is, to fund your wallet. And then as soon as that money hits, it goes out. So it's now the payment is as fast as you can be. So that way you don't hold funds in Vitesse, in that wallet, you only top it up as you go forward. That option will be available, and it's not only available faster, but it's available in 100 and something currencies, so you're not limited to the 14 currencies that you have in STFO or company market. And also, you can pay anybody. That means in a claim, you can pay a third party, you can pay an expert, you can pay the claimant, you can pay you don't have to either pay the broker and then the broker paying somebody else. You can pay directly a third party through the direct payment option.
In terms of central settlement, we would still get the broker, the carrier number, the broker signing messages. That would still be at the end of the day, would it?
Yes, that one is still at the end of the day. So it's interesting because the new digital platform does not have a constraint. We could move to 24-hour settlements or to 12-hour settlements. However, the long pole of this tent is not the digital platform. It would be the payment. So in RBS and STFO, they take time reconciling their part. I'm sure that in the near future, they will have new platforms, and now we could move to shorter cycles. But yeah, for now, it is.
Thank you.
I would add to that I think, I don't know if there's anybody from the CFO community here, but I would say from a working capital and cash flow standpoint, that's got to have a big impact given the sums of money that we're talking about moving in the market on a daily basis.
Hi, Adrian Duggleby from MAP. When we're affecting change, we tend to avoid the run-up to quarter close. I was just wondering why you find June a better option than July.
I'll take that one just to clarify, and I thought I did mention it, obviously I missed it. We're looking at the end of June going into July, so it'll be over that period, end of June into July, not the 1st of June, so not renewal season, no.
No, I'm talking about will we be closing the month of June and then doing our quarter end reporting on the new or the old platform?
No, so exactly to your point, you would close the quarter and your half year in the old environment, and we would migrate to the new environment in the second part of the year. I agree with you. That would be a really tough choice to do that in the middle of the month.
It just
wouldn't
seems
it?
odd
Yeah.
that the focus is on June, when in reality I think we would be starting it in June.
I think what we've got to do, we've got a couple of slide updates where we've got to be more specific, where we put stars on maps, just to be absolutely clear on that one. But no, we wouldn't impact your H1 close or your quarter close.
Okay. That's the right answer, by the way.
Hi, Paolo Carato from Canopius. With respect to the daily batches not being there now, has there been any discussion with the vendors of the policy administration systems as to their ability to cope with kind of a more of a drip-fed messaging approach? And a second question would be, could you clarify what's happening with LAWS messages, please?
Yeah, I can take that one. So in terms of drip feeding messages, it depends on the channel. So EDI messages are 24 hours. So you receive them at 6 a.m. in the morning, most of the EDI messages. That will continue to be so. CWT messages, for example, are every 30 minutes. You will continue to do so. Even though the platform is live and the record will be there, we are not disrupting the cadence of the current messaging that you have. We're keeping it the same. Again, you can log into the portal and you can see the premium has been signed. However, you will receive the USM or the BSM at 6 o'clock in the morning as scheduled. So that's the plan. So it depends on the channel. Write-back messages, eBot and eCots, and those are actually live. As soon as we get a claim notify goes immediately out. eBot the same way. CDR will also be live. Those are new modern messages, and so it depends on the channel. To your second question about LAWS, for context, LAWS is the Lloyd's Outwards Reinsurance Service. It's comprised of two channels. There's a portal, there's an interactive portal where brokers and carriers can transact LAWS business, and there's a set of EDI messages. We love EDI messages. Lim, there's I think 7 EDI messages that are for LAWS specifically. Those are part of phase 1, will be available on phase 1, and again, with the portals, there's changing portals, but the EDI messages, you will still receive the LAWS EDI messages as you do today. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paul Birmingham from Ecliptic Technology, and we provide the Gemini solution for the market. Just wondering when the new world goes live with ICOS, has the Gemini transactions that will go through that been considered, and to what extent can we plug in when we're not the placing broker or the carrier, but we're doing it on behalf of the carrier market?
So specifically on a Gemini connection, we have, so there's a plethora of new requests for functionality, and the Gemini connection is one of the ones that we have discussed with the LMA and Limos for some time. We are in the process, or actually we already created, a new function with the joint venture called the Design Office. And in fact, one of your Blueprint a colleague, Rich Boyd, is heading that. And we have centralized all the new requests. And these are new requests, what we call post-sequence 5. So not something that is in scope right now being built, but anything that comes. So the new platform will allow us to add functionality much faster. The Gemini connection is something that it is in that backlog at the moment. The part that we still have yet to do is prioritize it against every other, because the claims community has a set of functionality that they want, the premiums community, the treaty community, delegated authority, there's a new Lloyd's delegated authority strategy published. So there's a lot of competing for the same resources request. Gemini is on the backlog. I don't have yet an answer on the plan or the priority.
Okay, just a slight follow-up question to that then. In the event that it is in the backlog and not ready for the first release, will there be an alternative mechanism for working as we currently are, which is using currently the parallel UCR process, in the interim pending?
So messaging today exists. Parallel UCRs will be a thing of the past, by the way. So again, let me put it in context for those that are not claims practitioners. Today, the claim has a unique claim reference, a UCR. But in order to pay an expert, you have to create a parallel claim in order to pay that expert. So the main claim is on one UCR, and then you have what we call a parallel UCR to pay an expert. That's a thing of the past. In the future, your claim will have the expert payments within the same claim. You'll not have to create a parallel UCR. The channels that you interact today with ECF will be kept in the future. So if you send a write-back message or a limb claim, or the existing channels that you interact today with ECF will exist tomorrow for ICOS, that is the new claims product. Yeah.
Okay, but currently we're doing it manually pending this change, so
So then you will have to, in the future, on day one of the new platform going live, you will have access to the portal and do it manually. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alvaro touches on a really interesting point there. So all of our discussions are sort of based on like phase 1 digital and the launch of phase 2 digital, and really we're not talking about anything further than that. But there is a lens on this program of work that says everything that we've just talked about actually delivers the start line. And what we've got in creating the digital central services, we can evolve and change those services in a way which we can't currently. So there's already a pretty significant list of ideas, all of which hold relative value, difficult to prioritize against each other, of course, at this stage. But the job of work at launch starts again in how we adapt those services, and that will be based on feedback from the market, what's important to clients, where we put time and energy. But a major part of what we're doing is actually putting us in a place so we can evolve the services programmatically and from a digital perspective once this system and once all the work that we're sort of discussing now has been launched. I mean, we often forget that and lose sight on that, but that is a major, major part of the work that we're doing, and we'll serve all of the market in a very different way and give us capability, which we don't currently have in terms of evolving those services.
Hi, Peter Houston, joint venture. A few of the customers since the 19th of June have wanted a little bit more colour around the Vanguard, generally the roles and responsibilities, and the opportunity to be, if you weren't a Vanguard member before, what's the opportunities to become a Vanguard member?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. So since June 19th, we've had about another 7 or 8 firms asked to be part of Vanguard, which is welcome. Right now, we've got a very good mix of brokers, carriers, various stages in their transformation already and their journey. Good mix of business as well, so we think we have a very balanced view. If you're not a part of Vanguard right now, we probably have capacity to take on a couple of more before the end of July, and the reason why I use end of July is because we're lining up the testing approach that'll take place, which will start in earnest in the fall of the various sequences. We've already done sequence 1, sequence 2 test, as we mentioned on June 19th, where we did a successful premium transaction between WTW and AXA. And wasn't without some hiccups along the way, which is part of what testing is all about, but eventually we figured it out. So yeah, if there's anybody that's interested, come ask me, Bob Verber, or I've got Ray Johnston up here, who's really the face of Vanguard, like it or not. He does the bulk of the work, him and his team, on this, and we can get you on board.
Emma Ford, Liberty Specialty Markets. I had to think then who I work for. I'm also the Richlicon UK Implementation Chair. I'm really, really pleased that today you focused on changing operational approach. I feel that there has been a silence around that, and I would actively encourage anyone, who's going on this journey to reach out to the Richlicon community, because many have gone through this changed the way they work, changed their operating models, and they do get massive, massive efficiencies. You know, like I said, it's a shameless plug, really. I can't breathe, I'm sorry. But, you know, we have case studies, the speed thing. Richlicon partners are agreeing claims in like 7 seconds. And it's a reality and it happens, and it's really, really positive to see the market going in that direction. So if you do want any more information, then, yeah, let me know.
If I can follow up on that, I was in New York for the Richlicon event 10 days ago or so, which I have to say, so for those of you that don't know, I'm a bit of an insurance market newcomer, having never really worked in the industry until about 8 months ago when I got asked to step in and help out. And that was really inspiring to be there with that group, really forward, digital-leaning folk, open to change, very excited about change, great ideas, solutions. And I learned an incredible amount and really came back inspired and kind of charged up, ready to go. So it's really great.
And I think that what goes for the last week, there were Richlicon events in New York, as Bob referenced, in Zurich and also in Singapore. The joint venture in Lloyd's had representation at every one of those to talk about the program, to talk about the potential. And I think the sentiment that you echoed was very much the sentiment of all those discussions, you know, very positive. And what Richlicon could show and prove from firms that had already taken those types of changes and those types of evolutions is extremely positive.
It's Adrian from MAP again. I don't know whether I'm rationed on questions, but if I could just pick Alvaro up on one point. I think you mentioned EDI messages 6 a.m. Was I right? Yeah. I think that possibly is the SLA. We tend to receive them about 11:30 of an evening, and we have a whole series of overnight processes that kick off to enable us to report to our underwriters, you know, as they walk into the office. So please don't build your processes to match the SLA. Do it to match the current delivery, or make it even better, I would suggest.
Definitely. So I can promise that. So we can make it, EDI messages today have to wait for the end of day batch to finish. In the cloud version, they're done in 15 seconds. So yes, we can definitely be better than the SLA. We can definitely send them early.
And as I have the mic and you're in the room, my pet subject has always been continuity of LPSO numbers, signing numbers and dates. Am I right to say that continuity will be retained both in phase 1 and when transition EDI messages are delivered after phase 2 has kicked in and there may be a digital broker submitting?
OS&D numbers, so original signing number and dates?
Signing number and dates, so that if it's a new transaction relating to an existing policy that may be signed through 2 years ago, that the original signing number and date would continue to be referenced, so we can link the new transaction that's just arrived back to the one that arrived 2 years ago.
So to your specific question, I can provide a bit more detail. I need to talk to a little bit to my technical teams. However, I can tell you that the first is the new platform will have something called reachback functionality. So if we have an additional premium on an original premium that was an additional premium in the cloud, that was an original premium in the mainframe, and that original premium had an OS&D of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we will fetch the original premium, not only the OS&D, but all the data, and bring it into the cloud so we can keep the history and we can keep that transaction going. The same happens with the claim. New claim movement will fetch the FNOR and all the previous claim movements on the mainframe. So there's the reachback functionality. On the original signing number and date syntax, For those that want to go into the nitty-gritty details of the London market, every time that we sign a transaction, it gets an OS&D. An OS&D is a combination of, I think it has letters as well, so it has numbers and letters. There's a specific syntax for Lloyd's, a specific syntax for ILU, and for Lerma. And these OS&D is a combination of the date, the reference. ILU has the tax number. Lerma has as well a type number. So there's a few things that concatenate in the same reference. And these OS&D is actually quite useful for all of our systems. So in the joint venture, we use it for almost everything. Your vendors and your software as well, they use it to map and track everything, as Adrian, you were pointed about. The reason that I cannot say, so the syntax will continue to exist. And of course, those references are per date. So each date they go and they have logic into them. So 1000s are corrections and 2000s are this and 3000s are Scheme Canadas. So that syntax and that logic will continue. However, I couldn't answer specifically your question about keeping the OS&Ds specifically in corrections, because I need to go back, because that's a very specific case where, especially in Lloyd's, you get the same OS&D with a new version. So the plan is to, yes, keep it as is, but I just need to confirm that.
Yeah, but that in essence is the question we asked many months ago, because if we have a risk that signs 5% and we account for it on that basis, and then a year or two later, that is contraed out and replaced by signing a 5%, and unless we can link it back, we won't make the adjustment to the original policy. So that is fundamental to how our PAS works, and I suspect others in the market.
So we can reach back, so because without boring too much the audience.
I'm sorry.
No, but it's a good conversation because it is important. Without boring too much the audience, we're trying to go to the Rüschlikon standard, that is the cancel and replace standard. That means that if you have a transaction with a number and you have a correction later on, you don't use the number of the original transaction with a new V2, you actually use a new transaction reference that references the old transaction. So you have this layer. In Lloyd's, traditional has been the same number with a V2 or a V3 and V4. It gets quite complicated and quite hairy, but yes, we can have a more detailed conversation because we will be keeping Lloyd's versioning for the OS&Ds for corrections, yes.
Hi, it's Matt Wood, LMA. If a carrier, one or more carriers say they are not ready on day one, does it hold the whole market up? Or do we go live anyway?
Well, phase one is a single market event, Matt. So I think the job of work between now and the launch is to ensure that everybody has got what they need, be it vendors, managing agent or broker, to make that day. But to be clear, I think if the date moved, we would still have to run as a single market event. The team and I think the wider community needs to work together to make sure that doesn't happen. From our perspective, that's to provide the support around testing and training and onboarding and all the things we need to do to make sure it happens. And kind of why you'll hear us call to arms that, you know, every market, every firm needs an adoption plan for phase one digital, because obviously, as you can imagine, you know, the chances of us letting that happen and moving a date are extremely slim. I think we would come at it from the other perspective and we would be working extremely closely with the whole market to keep abreast of progress and to make sure if there are any challenges, you know, we're picking those things up.
Frank McGonigal-White from MS Amlin. I had a question around phase two. So phase one, the JV continued to provide the same service to us and we're de-risked because we're on the new tech stack. Is there a nervousness that the market will push back and say, hey, we're happy with how the JV have run today, so we're happy with how they run tomorrow? And what has been done to make sure that we don't get that apathy on phase two because of it?
It's a great question. So let me have a first stab at that one and then we'll go there. So the program, the journey, only works with phase one and phase two delivered. So if we stop at phase one, where we have a new set of central services, in terms of benefits to the market, be them costs, be them the full scope of operational changes, be it the full gambit of what the Blueprint 2 narrative is, we simply won't deliver or achieve that. So I think as a market, it would be absolutely pointless to stop at phase one. But I think there will definitely be firms who sort of say, right, well, we've done a good job of phase one. You know, we've now got other priorities, we've got things to do, and that's why the phase two window will be open for a while, and firms will be able to attach to it at a different point. But I think the question will be moot, because if we stop at that point, the value and the benefit case of the entire program will not be delivered. So I'd leave it to the room, your choice. You can do a ton of work and get nothing for it, or we can do the whole job and get the full value case for it.
I think that's the carrot. Also, we need a stick. We have discussed that we need to penalize those participants that are laggards and are staying in old messaging that are bringing the market down. As simple as that. Because if you're in a slip and you have 5 participants in one broker and 99% of the team is on digital, but 1% is still in transitional, I don't know, sending me a paper LPen in a PDF, then we have a problem, because the automation, the live, the Vitesse payments, all of these things are a dream, and we cannot achieve them just because one participant was not in the slip. So we have discussed with the associations that we want to introduce differentiation pricing and to get a curve. And the more time it passes, the more we have to maintain these messages, these fax machines from the 80s, and we do start charging more. So that way the case to move to digital not only is the benefits you can get as an organization, but also you're getting more costs on the other side.
And I'll give you another carrot as well. So 2 carrots, 1 stick. You can't argue with that. We will have, from a Blueprint 2 Lloyds JV perspective, we will have a window where we're providing a level of support to transition to phase 2, which will be hugely advantageous to you. So if you choose not to go in that phase, best of luck with when you transition, because it will be on some different set of services or some different set of support. So strongly advise that it will be a much easier process to make that transition with the full force of the Resource Blueprint 2 program while it's alive. But it's a really interesting question. I can see that from many different perspectives.
I'm going to jump in and put a third carrot out there to the 1 stick.
It's a full salad.
In this morning session, I also commented on day 2, or what I refer to as day 2. What we're doing right now, what you're seeing in phase 1 and phase 2, is laying a foundation. And to me, that's an absolute necessity as the digital foundation gets laid down and we get everyone operating digitally. If you compare this to something like open banking, which is the one I used this morning, once you've got that foundation down, the innovation and the change that can be affected off the back of that foundation is absolutely incredible. If you look at the apps and the things you drive today because of open banking, it revolutionizes how you do business. It revolutionizes how you interact with products. So I suspect there's going to be benefits that we've not even thought of yet that's going to come to fruition. One to start thinking about is all that data is digital now. All that data is computable. We can start trending for the whole market on where's best place to do business and things like that. So there's a lot of other benefits that's going to come out the woodwork once we get used to operating digital. And that's going to drive a lot of people very quickly towards digital. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, we definitely expect market forces also to apply pressure here. Renewals. So if you have broker X that hasn't moved, well, maybe you might think the same on the broker side. If you have certain carriers that are still in legacy messaging and it's becoming a pain and a cost on your operations, then you might want to move your books away from that. So we expect market best practices to have a role here in terms of choosing who you do business with.
Marek Baldi, I work with the Blueprint 2 team looking after the vendor community. The question kind of goes back to the earlier question about messaging, and Alvaro, you touched on how claims that were in flight would be dealt with, and other transactions that were in flight. Are you anticipating any kind of extended blackout period?
Yeah, so the final detailed plan for cutover has not been finalized, but we have started the conversation already in terms of it's very different per transaction type. Premiums, as I said, are easier. You have this reachback functionality with things that are in flight are fairly easy to close before we go live with the new platform. However, there are other types of transactions, like a perfect example is LIRMA claims. So in LIRMA, claims are agreed by each individual carrier, and it's independent, so the settlement takes place independently from the others. Even though it's a single claim, it's really 5 or 6 mini claims as done on the global side. So there's an element of migration and an element of transition in the cutover part that will be published. So we will have more details on those because it would depend on the type of transaction that goes through.
Hi, it's Duncan Randall here from Advantage Go. We basically produce syndicate managing agent systems. We've had a look, and obviously correct EDI specs are very important. We think there's a number of errors and omissions that are in the specs that you're building at the moment. We've been trying to give that feedback for some time. Is there going to be a forum for that? Can we actually get correct specs?
I don't know specific about the, so I do know that you have provided some feedback from AdGo. We do have a team, so I know that you know some of that team, so Drew, and I don't know about the specifics about those corrections, if they go into the next spec or in the next batch. I know that we were trying to finish the first set of batches and then go back and see if we had to do any revisions. So we could get most of them out, especially the LORS one have not been published yet. So I don't know exactly when those corrections or if they are in progress at the moment or not, but we can find out. Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think part of the problem was there used to be sort of committees, technical committees, as I understand, that would actually produce, and then you'd have a draft and then here's the final after the corrections have been made. And now you're just getting PDFs. And you're removing stuff, so we can't, it's very difficult.
Let me clarify that. A lot of the EDI specs were actually completely out of date. So they were not only in PDFs, some of them were photocopies. So I think it was the WSET spec that it was almost lost to the fires of London in 1477, really. And the main problem that we have is that even though the spec says ABC, the actual mainframe is not doing ABC, it's doing ABE. And somewhere along the last 15, 18 years, something got changed, but it was never on the spec. So one of the problems that we have is not only that we have to trust the spec, but also we have to double check what is there. So that's the main issue there. But if there's mistakes...
There are some errors that have been introduced in the spec because of that. Yeah.
So, Alvaro, I'm going to jump in here. What we are doing at the moment with regards to those type of situations is we're now very close to actually having access to production-like data with the market agreeing to it. We've got 1 or 2 to get across the line now. The minute we've got that, we've got a data team, and we had a question this morning about level of maturities within the team. The data team's the one that I would say is the one we need to bring up to the most mature level as quickly as possible, because we've not had the liberty of actually looking at the data. Once we now can see the data, we'll start running those tests ourselves to go, right, mainframe produced X for EDI, we go reproduce it, does it reproduce exact? Yes, it does. Oh, hang on, there's potential error over there because someone back in 1940 didn't document that they changed the system. So as we go through them, we will look at the specs. If there are any mistakes in the specs, which you rightly say there is, the minute we spot it, we'll update it and we'll alert.
Yeah, but we have a forum where we can tell you what they are now.
then more than happy to take the conversation offline. And yeah, if you point us in the right direction on where you think there's issues, happy to listen.
Okay.
Hello, Vicky McClure, QBE. Just to pick up on the last one, I think the question was about how we do raise these issues. Which way would you like us to raise issues?
Sorry. Yeah, so I can answer that. So we have the engagement team. There's a vendor community. So I think at Marek, you handle the engagement, the vendor community and the engagement team. So I'd go as being a vendor. So each of the participants has a different engagement community. If you can funnel either your feedback or your questions through them, and we have a process that it goes to the different areas depending on what it is. Yeah.
I've got a question back because you asked the question, are those communities working effectively for you now? Or do we need to change something?
They always answer my questions, I have to say, but it would be useful to see the questions that everyone else is raising. So if we had a form where we could raise a question and see what the response was, because, you know, those questions could apply to everybody. So rather than us all trying to find the questions ourselves, it would just be useful to see them.
Right. Just to let you know.
I hope you're going to say what I think you're going to say.
What we have got, sorry, I'm looking around. Hey, there you are. What we do is we've got frequently asked questions that are on the Blueprint 2 website. So we've got 2 sets of those, which they're collated based on, obviously, the most frequently asked questions that we get from the market. But that said, look, continue to do what you're doing, speak to your engagement lead. They should be able to funnel those questions for you. But for everyone else, you know, if there are questions that you need to see, yeah, we've got the QR code and everything. So maybe what we'll do, it's on this pack. When it goes out, you'll be able to see it. So if you have got questions or you do want to go into the website, see the FAQs, please feel free to do so.
Yes, Rob Myers at the LMA. I don't think I dreamt this. I think on the 19th of June event, there was a commitment given that by the time of the September event, all the vendors and all the organisations that needed to do something for phase 1 readiness would be in possession of all the detail they needed about those changes. Are you still confident, or did I dream that? And if I didn't, are you still confident that by September, and I know there's a lot out there already, but everything that everyone needs to know will be published and available?
We are living your dream, Rob.
That's good to hear.
But Rob, just everything that everyone needs to know, so that's a big scope of information. Lots of the stuff is going to be dependent on particular managing agent op model or the way a broker runs. So the full gambit of all information people need, I think we're there to answer questions, we're there to provide the specs, which I think is the specific point the guys made to. I think each adoption journey will be slightly different. So just by definition, we can't give everything that everybody needs to know. What we want to do is answer as many questions as we can, which allows every part of the market to develop that journey for them.
I think reconfirmation of the library of stuff. Yeah, sorry, reconfirmation of the library of stuff that is common to everyone, I think would be really, really helpful. So you go tick, tick, tick. You know, if there's 50 things that everyone should have, what are the 50 things? And if they can then satisfy themselves they're available. And sure, they might spawn 120 questions, but they've all got the 50, and kind of your job is done in that sense in terms of the basic materials, and then it's about follow-up and detail.
Definitely the intent, yeah.
And just on that point, actually, leave the mic over in that corner because I can see Hannah sitting there. So just in terms of how we share information, collate things, Hannah's led the production of the model office, which I hope you've all had the chance to see, which kind of was a model office around engagement. In fairness, not a model office in its truest sense. So the work that she's leading at the moment is to take that model office online and actually do the next iteration of how we can share that type of stuff. So maybe just give us 30 seconds on kind of what that work looks like, how we're going to distribute new and updated information to the market with the work that you're doing on the model office and web content stuff.
So the model office that exists today, as Matt has just said, is focused around the user journeys for brokers and underwriters, and where along that journey the technology and solutions come into play and the progress we have made along each of those. So elements like CDR, IMIC, the digital gateway, etc. As Matt's touched on, we are aiming to get the model office up online so that you can access all of the content that already exists on Gallery 3. If you haven't been, quick plug to go up and have a look and give us your feedback on that. Alongside that, we will utilise it as an online repository that will include many of the things that we've spoken about today, so the EDI specs, API specs. Once we've landed them ahead of the September 25th event, you'll have your broker underwriter to-do list there as well. So we're aiming to get it online as quickly as we can, so that will be effectively your one-stop shop where all of that information will be housed.
Thanks, Anna.
Can I go now?
Hang on.
It's been waiting so
I think we've got
patiently.
one at the back.
It's more a validation than a question. But, will there be any changes with regard to line slips and consortia?
Not in process. So line slips, so bulking and non-bulking, what some people call facilities. The process is the same as today. So again, new portals and new digital platform, but the process stays about the same. Consortia, the same. So there's no planned changes for the way that those two services or those two types of services operate.
One more, apologies if it's a bit technical. You mentioned that DRI being retired. Is that the ANS DRI submission method, or any brokers that submit EBOT, ECOT, DRI attachments? Is that also out of scope, or are you trying to say that you want everything in stream?
No, so sorry. DRI. Okay, IMR DRI. So this is the way. Again, I won't bore too much with the technical details. The way that most brokers submit today a work package, for example, a premium, is to the IMR, but they don't log into the IMR and upload it. They actually send their machine and they send a DRI message to the IMR with the work package, being a PDF of the LPAN and some schedules and maybe the MRC. So they send that. That is considered phase one. However, EBOT and ECOT as well, you can submit them as DRI to the ASG Adept Gateway. That's another channel of submission. That is not going anywhere. That is part. So the ASG Adept Gateway will have three options to receive EBOT and ECOT: is the REST API way, the SOAP API way, and the DRI way. And all types of documents attachments, so you can do them in message, you can do them through link and DRI. Is that it? So they're all included in scope.
Thanks for clarifying.
And again, sorry for.
Thank you.
So for those of you that couldn't hear that answer, so they're not published in the Blueprint 2 site because the GRLC standards are actually owned by Accord, so they're managed by Accord. However, everybody can log into the Accord website, and you'll have the operating manual, toolkits, and there's a lot of documentation of how they work, how do you create your queries, how you acknowledge, how do you close, in all, so the EBOT TA, the FA, the Cache TA, the ECOT CM, the CDR will be part of that library by the end of July. So all of that information is in the Accord website, and is actually not even a London market information, that it's global information. So that's the Rushlicon standard, really. That is available, not in the Blueprint 2 site, it's in the Accord website. We can provide that. Thank you.
Sorry, Vicky McClure again. Can I just confirm that for phase 2, we can phase our rollouts internally? So we could have operations as one on phase 2, but our claims not? Or does everything have to go at once for phase 2?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
So for phase 2 digital, once we move over to ECOT and EBOT, do we have to move our whole company onto phase 2 digital, or can we do it in tranches?
You can do it per transaction. I'm going to regret saying this, but you can do it per transaction. So you can do it per class of business. So let's say that we have a book of your property book, and you want to dip your toes in EBOT and ECOT, you can do it. So as a broker, as a carrier, you do not have to choose all phase one or phase two. You don't have to. It's not an if, an or a question. It's an and. You can do both. You can have your foot in the old world and your foot in the new world for as long as you need. So yes.
Just a double check on that. There's no problem with the broken number.
No. So there's no, the only problems that you have of having a foot in the old world and the new world is that, of course, your operations are a little bit different. Let me give you a practical example. So let's say that you're a carrier and you adopt eBot for your property book. And most of your brokers are on eBot. Amazing, all your property eBot TAs flow through. You get your premium signings immediately. You get your signing numbers and dates, your SMDs immediately. So all of this is great. But then you have one broker that is on LPAN, and that broker sends the premium transaction in an LPAN transaction, in an LPAN. Now you have a foot in the old world, and that does not translate to an eBot. So now for that transaction, in your side of the world, you will have to have a slightly different operating model because now you're not receiving an eBot TA, you're receiving something else, either a portal or an EDI message or an Accord for All or something different. So that's why it has its pros and cons on how you divide if you're going to do a mix, let's call it a mix transaction type.
Subject to 3 carrots and 2 sticks.
Yeah.
If you're in a position where you think you might have to do that, come and speak to us, and we can walk you through scenarios where it's not advisable. Everything's technically possible, and that's kind of the problem with the new world. You can physically do everything. Whether we should and whether operationally you can support that is another question. So if you're in a situation where you've got a very clear, distinct line and you've got maybe a digital PAS system, but you haven't quite upgraded your claim system yet, then there's quite a nice clear line between the two processes. That's a fairly easy thing to manage. If you're in a situation where you're doing it by class of business or by book, talk to your rep or come and talk to us, and we can walk you through some practical examples that will help maybe kind of align your processes as much as they can be if you're in that situation.
Alvaro, you just mentioned the wonder word Accord for All. And I wondered if you could talk to people, because there have been questions about the longevity of Accord for All. And Sean just talking about claims, obviously Right Back plays an important part for a lot of market participants as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes. So Accord for All first. Accord for All, for those of you that don't know it, is a type of custom EDI. So we basically take an EDI message and we transform it into an XML in the Accord format. Accord doesn't like it too much, but it's okay, we do it. There's about 28 carriers that use it. This was a temporary solution back 10 years ago, more than that, before we got into full eBot and eCall. Accord for All was originally, as bespoke EDIs, was originally out of scope for the transformation program. We're looking into bringing it into scope. So Accord for All, because it's widely used by not only a large volume of customers, but also a large volume of GWP. We're looking to bring Accord for All so that to bring those and to have those bespoke EDIs available on phase 1. On your second question about write back. So on write back messages, they will be supported on phase 1 as they are today. So again, the message stays largely the same. You will just change your gateway from XAG, that's what you use today for your write back message, to the new ASG Adept gateway. But the message itself stays mostly the same. I think there's no changes there. The only bit about the longevity of write-back is classified as a phase 1 service. That means that in our eyes, it does have a sunset. Why? Because write-back, first, does not include the broker. So FNOL, broker queries, and broker settlement submissions are not included in write-back. So if brokers are on EBOT and ECOT, and carriers are on write-back, you still have people talking in French and people talking in English on one side. And we in the middle, we still have to translate. That's not the ideal case. We want everybody to be on the same standard. The small technical issue is that write-back is a SOAP API. And when we did the initial classification of services between phase 1 and phase 2, you had to be a REST API. So that's a new type of API, or a more modern type of API. It's 12 years old, but in order to be classified as a phase 2. However, even though write-back is classified as a phase 1, out of all the messaging standards, write-back is actually quite good and very modern. It has very rich data payload. It was done just a few years ago for market standards. So we don't see, it's not a burning platform. EDIs and CWTs, we want to completely shut them down. Write-back is not created equal. In the gradient of those that are fully digital or very, very old from the 70s, write-back is on the top in terms of phase 1 messages, but it's still classified as a phase 1 type message.
Don't worry, I won't talk about EDI this time. In terms of the sort of new world and sort of the new MRCs and things that we got, has that sort of been reviewed extensively? We have a concern. Part of order has come back into that and seems to have caused a lot of confusion on the MRC. That was actually deliberately excluded as part of contract certainty.
MRC version 3, are you referring?
Yeah, the very, very recent one. So up until now, that's been banned, effectively.
Yeah.
And now it's been brought in. But it was taken out as part of contract certainty.
So for us,
I think the history of it, I can tell you the history.
Yeah.
I think there was an attempt by SDC, which is not a good thing, to try and digitise paper contracts. And so the code was accidentally put into the Accord set, and that seems to have come full circle. And
well, I mean, I guess the first thing to say about the MRC is that the MRC is owned by the market and fronted by the Data Council. So we are recipients of that information. So we can opine an opinion on what technically we require,
we don't control it.
But we are customers of that in the same way that you are.
Yeah, there was an old panel 1 notation, and then they said, well, one of those 4 options, it's not contract certain, so we'll take it out. But it's coming back in. It's slightly problematic if you can't.
I'm going to go a step further on this one. We don't deal in MRCs. So what happens at MRC, this program right now doesn't. We use the information if you're processing in phase 1. If you go to what we would use for MRC equivalent is the CDR standards. So it's the CDR that you need to look at, and that's the one that we're taking from the Data Council and re-implementing into the digital gateway, as it's called, or IROS as we call it internally.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things where it's not somewhere where we could give feedback to, so we can't point out that that's wrong.
Yep. Can we get Mike across here, because there's the person you really want to chat to.
Hi, I'm Sarah Thacker. I was the product owner for the MRC as we're doing the work. And we're still collecting in any comments, so please send them through. If you send them into the adoption team, they'll find their way to us.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
As a start, if you perhaps could send through who you are, and then we can contact you, that would be great.
Yeah, no, of course.
Thanks.
Thank
you.
Any final questions? We've probably got time for a couple more. Are we exhausted? I might regret that.
Ben Williams, Chesterfield Insurance Brokers. Do we get rid of all the XAG certificates, the IP addresses that we connect to now, single access between our cloud to the XC cloud?
Yes. XAG is going. It will be fully replaced by the ASG Adept gateway. So that means that if you interact with XAG in any way today, write back messages, DRIs, I think that's it. Those are the 2 messages to go through it. You will have to change your IP addresses, update your security credentials, new way of authenticating yourself and changing that channel from one place to the other. So yes, that is one of the systems that it's going to be shut down.
Feels like we're there. Going once, going twice. Listen, thank you for coming in. All that remains is to say thanks for coming, thanks for your questions. I think you can see from the session we've had, the richness of the discussion. It's great for everyone else to hear what's on your mind, what's relevant to your firm. Couple of takeaways from this. So the route to anything on the program is the engagement team. So we've got a whole army of people facing off against all of our brokers, managing agents and vendors. If they don't know the answer, they will navigate to get the answer for you. The second thing I would say is some really interesting comments and discussions about like really fundamental nuggety things about your op model programs. Like if we don't have, I can see the cogs turning. If we don't have that thing, that's a problem for us. Up until a few weeks ago, I sat where you're sitting now. I couldn't encourage you more to think laterally about your op model programs. The people that make the most value out of this program are the ones that actually are going to move internally your op models into different places. And actually the opportunities that I think that creates across the full end-to-end digital, which we'll get from phase 1 and phase 2, are many. A simple one I'd call out is, to your question about what about we've got different parts of the portfolio and different levels of maturity and tech. I totally get that. A large broker, you've perhaps got your P&C business running through eBot, the rest not. The job of work would be, how do you get your whole portfolio running through eBot? That probably is, in that example, your adoption journey. So I think I would really, really encourage you to think about your adoption plans, not just in terms of like the lowest common denominator of plugging in your current op model into a new set of plumbing. Like how do you actually get that force multiplier from it? I think that's going to be a really interesting sort of line of inquiry, and I think the firms that look down that road are probably where you'll see the most value. But listen, thanks for coming in. What we will do is we will wrap up all the questions that we received ahead of time. We'll wrap up the discussion that we've got today. We'll put all of that out and make sure that it's available to you. I think we'll try and do more events like this where we can hear sort of questions and get that sort of detail level discussion going. And if you have a question, we're here to help. So go to your engagement teams. If there's something that's important to you, important to your firm, let us know and we'll share it with the rest of the community. Thank you very much. And I think we've got, you've probably earned it. Feel free to stop for a glass of wine and we can continue to talk about EDIs or any of the other things you want to go. Thank you very much.